You're listening to Civic Media. You can tune into any of our live shows on any radio station across the state with the Civic Media app. Find us in your phone's app store and listen anytime, anywhere.
Broadcasting across the state of Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and around the world on the Civic Media app. This is the Dom Salvia Show. And now, here's your host, Dom Salvia.
And welcome to the Dom Salvia Show. Happy Monday to us all. You can always be a part of this fine production. 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. Got Aaron working super hard on the board today for you. Want to thank Maggie Dawn. If you folks have been sticking around, you know, Maggie and I are doing a little thing. I'll come in a little early on the Mondays, and she'll stay a little later on Tuesdays, try to catch up and hang out with each other. Really appreciate her bringing me on and the ability to talk with my dear friend Maggie. Check her show out 2 to 4 p.m. Monday through Fridays here on the Civic Media Network. Big show for you today. We got a guest coming on. His name is James Vanderloo. He's the head of OEC Group in Milwaukee, a facilitator of importing goods from all over the globe. Import, export. There's apparently some port workers going to go on strike. Perhaps we'll talk about that. Perhaps we'll get into the economics of tariffs and how that works, how that impacts his business, and how that impacts us consumers here in the great United States of America. Also, as we discussed briefly with Maggie in the last hour, the storm barreling through Florida and southern parts of this country, devastating. Over 100 dead, many missing. Hopefully, we keep our fingers crossed. That's just an impact of cell towers being down and folks not being able to reach and talk to their loved ones. But this has been a terrible storm. There has been federal approval for disaster relief monies from the administration to North Carolina, certainly. And as mentioned, you know, Donald Trump, some of the megas already trying to make this a political issue. You know, the waters haven't even receded yet. And you know, Donald Trump's out there making outrageous claims that somehow, some way, the Republicans are getting shafted by the Democratic administrations in North Carolina and in the federal government. Of course, there's no proof to that. That's just Donald Trump talking trash. And the first one who brings politics into a natural disaster loses. So congratulations, Mega. Didn't take you very long, did it? Also, in that regard, Trump was in the great state of Wisconsin over the weekend. Can you believe it? He keeps coming here over and over and over again, and he keeps making terrible news because that's what Donald Trump does. And some of the news, the headlines, as it describes Donald Trump's efforts to come here, I love this one. Donald Trump delivers a dark speech on immigration in Wisconsin's Prairie du Chien. And we have a little bit of sound from this and some other reporting as well from the New Republic. I guess in some regards admonishing the New York Times, the Washington Post on their coverage, this sane washing. Because, folks, as we get closer and closer to this election, the crazy craziness, I'm trying not to swear, the craziness will continue. That's what happens. You know, we're talking what, 35 days from to the election. The trend line is not going great for the former president, and his speeches are rambling and incoherent, and they're certainly getting darker. They're getting more vitriolic, if that's even possible, and more insulting and just crazy. This is crazy talk. And I think the mainstream media needs to report it accurately, and I think some of them perhaps don't. The craziness is a factor. The sane washing is a thing. But wait, there's more. According to Jessica Rodriguez over at the Journal Sentinel, Trump coming back tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. He was in Prairie du Chien on Saturday, and he's going to Dane County. He will be at Dane Manufacturing in Waunakee at 1:30 tomorrow. Donald Trump heading into Dane County, man. You know, they told him, all of his advisors and all the smart people in the campaign, hey, man, Don't give up on Dane County. Go back to Dane County. Go to Dane. You got to go right into the foothold of the progressive and democratic movement in the state of Wisconsin and show up and show them that you're there. So he's going to Waunakee, not quite downtown, but not Willie Street, but we'll take it, I guess. Question mark. Then after he darkens the door of Dane County at the Dane Manufacturing in Waunakee at 1:30, he will go to Discovery World along Lake Michigan in Milwaukee at 5 p.m. He will speak there. Of course, this fine show goes till 6, so I fully imagine my commute will be impacted tomorrow when he comes to Milwaukee. Let's see what else we got here. Campaign, Waunakee, Wisconsin, doors open at 10:30 a.m. The Milwaukee stop. Let's see, doors open at 2 p.m. at 500 North Harbor, Milwaukee. So what's he gonna say, right? What haven't you heard? Well, I would imagine he'll come up with some things to tell you. This dark speech, as Hope Carnop describes it, in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Campaign was held indoors, although the campaign initially planned an outdoor event, but apparently the Secret Service raised concerns about its ability to secure the event due to staffing shortages. The UN General Assembly, I understand, Trump was really mad. It's like, oh, they got to go protect the Iranians. They want to kill me, and so now I can't have my event outside. He was very distraught. According to the report, he spent much of his speech criticizing Kamala Harris over immigration. Of course, Harris visited the U.S.-Mexico border on Friday, and we did talk about this statistic that some of the righties are throwing out there. We had a caller bring it up on Friday. It came up over the weekend yesterday at the talk shows, the Sunday morning circuit, folks talking about these 13,000 immigrant murderers roaming free in the country. Well, that's not quite accurate, and as you can imagine, and we do have some additional reporting on that as well. But the tone of Donald Trump in this particular speech, I think it was worse. I think it's worse than some of the other stops he made in Wisconsin. And in some ways, the mentally impaired comments. I mean, what an insulting comment to make in so many ways. Because of course there are folks with challenges, and we know that Donald Trump made fun of disabilities before, of handicaps before, whatever your terminology is, the special, those with special gifts, made fun of him before. Oh, I don't remember all these kinds of things. And so is it surprising that he would, throw these terms around just so willy-nilly? Of course it isn't. It's only surprising that it took him this long to go this route. But Aaron, if you would, let's get a little flavor of this. Cut number 1, Trump and Prairie du Chien.
Kamala is mentally impaired. If a Republican did what she did, that Republican would be impeached and removed from office, and rightfully so, for high crimes and misdemeanors. Joe Biden became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way. She was born that way. And if you think about it, only a mentally disabled person could have allowed this to happen to our country. Anybody would know this.
I mean, everybody knows. Everybody's talking about it. So there he is. Is it surprising? No, of course not. He's an insulting, terrible human being, and that's how he talks. That's what he thinks. Now, of course, Kamala Harris is probably one of the smartest people he would ever face. We saw him clean the floor with him during the debate. And apparently he's what? He's not going to debate her again. It's too late. I would think, well, certainly, sir, if you think she has all these challenges, you should be banging down the doors to debate her again. Some more from Trump and Prairie du Chien over the weekend. Of course, prosecuting the cheaters. Well, let's hear what he has to say. I hope he's not talking about himself. Cut 2, please, Aaron.
If we win and when we win, we're going to prosecute people that cheat on this election. And if we can, we'll go back to the last one, too, if we're allowed. But we're going to prosecute people, so at least they know that's going to happen.
Now, again, is it at all ironic that this guy is literally facing federal trial for interfering with the election? The one they keep trying to bump back. The one that, Jack Smith put a 180-page document in front of the judge specifying, laying out some of the specifics of the crimes that Donald Trump committed and the folks around him and some of the testimony thereof. And now the big question for the judge is how much of that document will be released to the public? How much of that, if any, how much of that document will be redacted, if any? Presumably they, take out the names and all that, but the subject, what they said, what their testimony is, what they will testify to. Well, I think some of that information would be very relevant. And so for a guy who says, if we win, we're going to prosecute people who cheat. Well, again, he lost and he's being prosecuted for his efforts to cheat. His efforts to cheat, to overturn the election. That's what January 6th was. That's what the soft coup was. That's what the fraudulent elector scheme was all about. Multi-pronged, a multi-state national conspiracy. Man, it sounds crazy, right? Sounds like some of those righties and QAnon. But unfortunately, we have grand juries and trials to show that no, this is not a conspiracy. This is not something out of left field. This was a plan put forth by Donald Trump and his lackeys to overturn the government. I don't know how we can say that enough, but he's really concerned about the cheaters. Oh, here we go. No one speaks English in Springfield. Oh, of course. Let's hear what he has to say. Cut 3.
The majority of the school cannot speak English. In Ohio, Springfield, they can't speak English. They're taking over the schools. There's nobody that can speak English. And the mayor's looking for interpreters. Isn't that wonderful? How can this happen?
The Haitian immigrants that are here legally, employed legally by a Trump supporter who has supported his Haitian employees, his Haitian neighbors. And for his support for the folks that came and work in his factory, working his job, he's been getting death threats from the other megas. So, sooner or later, you're on that list. Sooner or later, every single one of you megas, in some way, shape, or form, you will be on the list. And it's not the list from the Marxist, socialist, communist, progressive, whatever. No, man. The call's coming from the inside. This is your own crew. They come after you. Sooner or later, every single one of you will be a coffee boy that nobody knows, nobody cares about. So heaven forbid you actually need the help of a government, an organization, of a society, for self-governance, for we the people, if you got someone like Trump in charge. Folks, this is the Dom Salvia Show. Thank you for tuning in. You can call us at 855-752-4842. We have a few more cuts from Trump over the weekend. And again, a special guest, James Vanderloo, coming in at the bottom of the hour. Get your calls next, 855-757.
So finish up or drink and go home. Listen up, man, I'll tell you who I am. Just another stupid American. You don't wanna listen, you don't wanna understand. So finish up your drink and go home. Finish up your drink and go home.
Yeah, thank you for listening to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842, 855-75 As mentioned, Trump was in Wisconsin over the weekend, and don't worry if you missed it, he's coming back again. He'll be in Dane County tomorrow, then he'll roll over to Milwaukee County, be along the lakefront doing the Trump show. The only way he can, he'll be in Milwaukee tomorrow at 5 p.m. So, let's think about that when you're trying to get around town, folks. But he was here in the state of Wisconsin. We played a few clips of that. We also have some audio from him in, I believe, Erie, Pennsylvania. But one of the other statements he said here, I want to make sure I throw out there prior to getting this other sound. Again, it's all very consistent for this guy. Here's what he said. If Kamala is reelected, and I'm sure he didn't pronounce the name properly. If Kamala is reelected, your town and every town just like it, all across Wisconsin and all across our country, the heartland, the coast, it doesn't matter. It will be transformed into a third world hellhole. I mean, wow. It's hard to believe we actually made it this long without Donald Trump, and turning into a total hellhole. But he says it. If he's not reelected, Next time, the next 4 years, total hellhole. Just trust him. He knows. But as mentioned, he was also in Erie, PA, I believe it was. We have some sound from that. And again, just the continual ripping, let's call it, on his political competitor. Cut number 4, if you would please, Aaron.
There's something wrong with Kamala, and I just
Kamala.
don't know what it is, but there is definitely something missing. And you know what? Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
She's a stupid person. Stupid
What?
person.
Yeah, that's stupid person. Again, you can go to the background and look at the bio. You can see the trajectory of Kamala Harris's, career um, uh, of service to this country, and then we can go back and look at the bio of a guy like Donald Trump, and then you can determine whether or not for yourself you think Kamala Harris is smarter, quote unquote, than Donald Trump. I mean, I certainly do. But what I do know is she certainly has a better temperament. I'm not even talking politics here yet. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even talking about, what policies, what border policy she would enact, what tax policy she would enact, what her tariff policy may be, what's the foreign policy, what's important to her. Not even talking about any of those things. We're just talking about, character. You know, uh, the very basic. And Donald Trump continues to show that he does not have the character that it takes to run this country. We saw it in the White House the first time. Hopefully, we've learned our lesson, but he's out there insulting everybody all the time. What is it about this guy that inspires anyone to vote for him? I mean, are you down with the insults? Is it the Andrew Dice Clay campaign? Is that what this is? Because the shticks run up pretty quick. And ultimately, at some point, there's got to be a point to your candidacy, Trump. Make America great again. Oh yeah, how? How'd you do it last time, man? Just for clarity's sake, I know we always mention this, but what year exactly was America the greatest? I'm just wondering. I'm sure Trump thinks probably when he was elected. First, for me, it was on my birthday, man. A couple more from Trump in Erie, PA. Cut number 5.
If they didn't cheat, I wouldn't even be here today. You know why? I wouldn't have to campaign. I'm here only because they cheat. And they cheat in this state, especially in Philadelphia.
Oh, the big
and
cities.
I mentioned a couple of the areas, but for the most part, but Philadelphia is out of control. Yeah, Detroit is out of control.
Oh, yeah.
Atlanta is out of control. Places are out of control. Because if there was no cheating, if God came down from a high and said, I am going to be your vote tabulator for this election, I would leave this podium right now because I wouldn't have to speak. We wouldn't have any problem. We have to have a landslide because they cheat so damn much.
Well, I do agree that the Dems absolutely need a landslide. And as far as the cheating is concerned, the only cheating that I'm aware of that was done on any specific basis was by the Republicans, by those folks that have been charged, the fraudulent electors, and folks like Donald Trump. I mean, literally, those were the ones they're charged, man. They're going to trial for the cheating. Now, they think the cheating is what? Using drop boxes and encouraging people to vote? That's cheating? But literally, they are charged with it. One more. Then no more broccoli, I promise. Let's hear cut number 6.
These are smart people. They're not so stupid. But they have to be taught. Now, if you had one really violent day, like a guy like Mike Kelly, put him in charge, Congressman Kelly, put him in charge for one day. Mike, would you say, he's right here, he's a great congressman. Would you say, Mike, that if you were in charge, you would say, oh, please, don't touch them, let them rob your store. All these stores go out of business, right? They don't pay rent, the city doesn't have, it's a chain of events that's so bad. One rough hour, and I mean real rough, the word will get out and it will end immediately. It'll end immediately.
The Purge. Of course, that's The Purge. He's talking about the movie The Purge, where for like 12 or 24 hours, nothing is illegal. Everything is legal. And what makes me laugh about folks here is just so cavalier about, endorsing The Purge or endorsing the Civil War. They all think that they're going to be fine. It's going to be the other ones that suffer, never them. And of course, that is so far from the truth. Everybody suffers. Joel from Madison, you're up. Welcome, Joel. What do you got for us?
Well, I think when it comes to one rough hour, that myself and a good number of women that Mr. Trump had sexually assaulted and hadn't gone to trial, or Eugene Carroll, who spent so much time trying to get him to rights, the people in the jury who realized that this guy is still running away from the 34 felony counts that were judged against him. I think one rough hour with Trump would be lovely. I offer my services in that regard, and I don't think he realized the inner Wolverine that a lot of women have when they think about what this guy has done to their rights in this country. I would offer that his disaster relief with Puerto Rico, remember, the American territory, included the projectiles of paper towels lobbed at the audience, which, of course, that was helpful. That was hugely helpful. And I think it's just worth remembering when this guy starts peeing on Kamala Harris, it's worth remembering she was the Attorney General of a state with 30 million people in it. It is the 5th largest economy in the world, okay? Not in the States, in the world. It is a powerhouse. And through that office, she brought charges against big banks that were screwing people off and
Gotta cut you short, Joel. Yes, she's certainly qualified. James Vanderloo, head at OEC Group in Milwaukee. We're going to discuss the port workers strike and tariffs.
You're listening to Civic Media. Find the latest news, information, and archives of all your favorite shows on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show. Thank you so much for listening. You can be part of this fine production at 855-752-4842. But callers, please be patient. We will get to you. Want to introduce James Vanderloo. He is the head of OEC Group in Milwaukee. He is our resident trade expert. James, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dom. Good afternoon and great to be with you.
Certainly appreciate it. Trade has been a topic of conversation for quite some time, and now there is a new priority on it. Apparently, port strikes. Some of the workers not too happy with their situation. James, but before we get into that and the terrorist part of it, let's get into your background a little bit. What does OEC do, and how do they do it?
Well, OEC Group is a company that's been around for 40 years. We specialize in helping our customers import, export that entire process. So whether you need customs brokerage, delivery, or help overseas arranging shipments both to and from, we facilitate that entire process. I wish I could make it a little bit more difficult than that, but that's pretty much what we do.
So, James, when I was in grad school, I did a stint in Metro Detroit working for a local marble and granite facility. Yeah. And these guys had the hookup, man. We were getting containers of marble and granite directly from Italy. And I used a broker, presumably much like yours, to once the thing was ordered, we had to track it through and get it through shipment and get it in. And once it got here, you had to get on the rail, then it had to get on the truck and get to the yard. I mean, there was a lot involved with that. So I know a little bit about what you speak. I remember when first thing I got, James, was the container numbers. If you see the containers driving down the highway on the back of the semis, they have the container number on there. That's basically like their license plate, right?
Yeah, right. No, hey, before I started working in this industry, I didn't really notice them. Now I see them in my nightmares and in my dreams. So yeah, I see them everywhere. It's very true.
All right, so lots of import export, very, very important here. Obviously, we're global superpower here, and we're buying and selling things all over the country. What's the status on the strike? What is the issue as you see it, James?
So this is a big issue. These contract negotiations come around every 6 years between the ILA, which is the International Longshoremen Association, and the USMX, which is the United States Maritime Association. The ILA, you obviously know, represents about 85,000 dock workers on the East Coast unit. And then we have the USMX, who represents basically the port operators, the businesses that kind of come in, and a lot of the foreign-owned steamship lines that bring all the cargo in that you talked about. And, hearing that you bring in the Italian marble, that must have been that was the good stuff from Italy. So, hey, I'm definitely familiar with that still. So, yeah, but what's going on right now is, they're discussing basically a wage increase because of inflation, because of the record profits that the carriers made during COVID. These union workers were out there working, kind of while
Yeah.
a lot of people were working from home. And so they want to, deservedly a piece of the pie. And so they're having a contentious debate about that. And also one regarding automation at the ports and making sure that the union workers have protected jobs, both, in retirement and in current jobs. So they're looking for, a bigger piece of the pie, and their other counterparts to both the West Coast and some of the rail workers have received higher pay. And so that's kind of where we find ourselves today. And they're at a bit of an impasse. And the scary part is that they're now kind of going through the media and going to the government to kind of elicit help and kind of mediation through this, which shows that the two sides aren't going to solve this problem probably on their own. So that's what we're looking into probably starting tomorrow.
Folks, you're listening to the Dom Salvia Show. That's James Vanderloo. He's head at the OEC Group in Milwaukee, importer-exporter. He was our trade expert. The automation thing. I was reading some articles on this today because this is pretty breaking news. I mean, folks, there's writing up all over. This could be a big problem for business in the state. But let's talk about the automation portion specifically. Certainly over the years, James, automation has become a thing. It continues to be a thing. Does AI play into this? And how does one protect the labor of the union, but not then also take advantage of the benefits of automation?
It's a great question, and it's like that's why this is such a complicated and nuanced argument right now, because the longshoremen are looking at this just like all of us, where you're going to stores, you're seeing self-checkout, you're seeing the advancement of technology replacing workers, in many different ways. And so there is a little bit interesting caveat to this. Technically, if you look at it statistically, the U.S. ports are a bit inefficient in terms of, like, if you look at things globally. There's a lot to that. That's certainly not an indictment of the ILA workers or anything like that. It's just that, as you might know, it's very difficult to get more infrastructure in the United States.
Yeah.
To get rails, to get ports, these things that were built, a long time ago. It's a very, very difficult process. It's very capital intensive. This will be something that, if they don't resolve in this contract, it will continue to be an issue as more and more ports modernize. And as we look to kind of bridge that gap exactly. And I think that's really the crux of why this is going to be such a difficult negotiation, is because you really have to balance that fine line between, hey, obviously having better infrastructure helps us all out from an efficiency standpoint and for bringing more business. But you also want to make sure that the workers are protected and to make sure that they've got, jobs to do well into the future.
James, maybe a side note here. Have you seen your own experience, some of the Inflation Reduction Act, some of the legislation, the Infrastructures Act, put out by Congress? Have you seen any of that money getting spent on the ports? Is there any return on that yet?
We haven't seen as much as kind of what we would like to see. There are some really good success stories in Savannah and some of these East Coast ports of making deeper dredging so that they can accept bigger ships. There is a lot of development going on at the ports, but we haven't really seen a return on investment for any of that act yet. That hasn't really hit it quite as much as we were hoping.
Yeah, that infrastructure probably takes quite some time to get up and run and get the money spent and get the work done. What? It's one thing to import marble and granite, James. It's another thing to if you have perishable items. What will happen if this strike, and it sounds like it's going to hit tomorrow, and how many strikers are we talking about? And then what happens to those folks who have perishable goods on these containers?
So the ILA represents about 85,000 workers. Who will actually be walking out to this is probably close to around 45,000. Many people don't know this, but actually the ILA will help support like cruise ships and different things like that are still going in the market, but they're just totally going to basically cut off the flow of commercial goods. What that actually affects a lot more is kind of what's your point, the U.S. agriculture. So exports going out, or any shipments that haven't hit by tomorrow, if they're not processed at the ports, they're either sitting on a ship or they're sitting in a port facility waiting for this to get resolved. Obviously, that eliminates any kind of perishable goods that don't have a very long shelf life. The East Coast stopped accepting any kind of refrigerated bookings to the East Coast about a week or so ago. And so anything that requires that kind of thing is also going to suffer. So you've got things like chocolate and bananas. Bananas have obviously been the one that some of the media attention is drawn to, but yeah, those kind of things are at risk for going, for affecting that. And then, like I said, any kind of exports that we have that go to Europe, those things will also either need to be rerouted through the West Coast, or they'll need to wait until this is resolved.
James Vanderloo, head of OEC Group in Milwaukee. James, it's harvest season, man. I mean, is this timed in any way, shape, or form to make it, more impactful, to your opinion?
Whether it's good luck on the part of the union or not, it's everything is sort of converging right now. You've got an election year, and B, a harvest season. No, this was always the time that their contract was going to expire. But again, it is one of those things that we are kind of converging toward this perfect storm. And I actually should have probably not used that turn of phrase with the devastation in Helene that's going on. That's going to further compound. Going to further compound these issues, because that's the side of the coast where these are going to be affected too. So it's going to affect.
Wow, man.
It's going to affect a lot, and it is one of those things where it's a tough thing, because 1 day of delay, they say, is about 4 to 6 days of recovery. So some of our contacts within the ILA have stated that they're prepared at least for a 10 to 14 day strike, possibly more than that if it goes on. So you're looking, possibly some residual effects into 2025.
And James, with regard to perishables and those kinds of things, for your clients, if someone wants to organize something like this, they better have had it done already, I'm assuming. But what about insurance? Like, how does that play into the cost of shipping these goods, especially in this kind of environment?
So that's a great point, Dom. This idea of insurance. So earlier this year, vessels had to reroute their containers through the East Coast due to the Houthis in Yemen kind of firing pot shots. So they had to kind of go around the Horn of Africa, which took them about an extra 4,000 to 8,000 miles, depending on where you're going. So a lot of these people have been kind of having these problems beforehand. We were expecting this to some degree. This will be the first time in 50 years that the ILA has gone on strike. Typically, these things are resolved pretty amicably without much ado. And obviously, that's why we're talking about it now. But so they've seen some of these rising costs. They've seen things taking longer to get to the East Coast. So these issues have kind of just been compounding all year, and that's kind of, and I will say that there are probably some larger companies and big box stores that kind of saw this and were preparing ahead of time. So there are probably some companies that have 4 to 6 weeks of reserve materials on hand, especially with the holidays so close. But I think some of the problems that you could run into is if you were a smaller business, or if you maybe weren't kind of prepared for this, and maybe you only bring in a couple containers a month, but those 2 containers are such a big proportion of your total book of business. Those are the people that are going to get disproportionately affected by anything that happens on that coast.
James, is there a rule of supply for this? I mean, do folks generally, and again, you have a very, import export means a lot of things. So how many folks are like living on the edge? As you mentioned, if you bring in, 2 containers a month on average, are they jump up to 4 or 6 to try to get it out? How are they adapting ahead of time to try to help cope with this?
So the best thing that we've been looking at is diversifying, using as many of the coastlines as possible, really kind of preparing yourself from a business to be able to enter the country from, let's say, for instance, like around here, either a lot of people from Wisconsin will, if they're importing into Wisconsin, they'll use either the Chicago rail system, the Minneapolis rail system, and to some smaller degree, the Chippewa Falls has a container yard there. So just being able to sort of have an idea of what the costs are associated with shipping to all of those places, shipping through Canada, shipping through Seattle, Tacoma, and LA, in addition to the East Coast ports. That's kind of the best strategy to get out ahead of this, and that's kind of what we've been doing with our clients. But at the end of the day, this does eliminate a lot of options, and there's just certain companies that have their infrastructure set up to better be handled through the East Coast. And those people obviously have to reroute and spend some time, getting through the congestion on the West Coast.
James Vanderloo, head of OEC Group in Milwaukee. Last couple of minutes here, James. Let's talk about the tariffs. I talked about the containers used to bring in to Detroit from Italy. If an administration taps a 100% increase on that material, who ultimately pays for that, Jim?
So it's a great question, and there's always a lot of debate about it. Ultimately, unless the business is willing to eat the cost, it's always going to be the consumer at the end of the day that usually absorbs the cost of the tariff. So we've seen, and I would say that tariffs used to be a little bit more of a partisan issue. Obviously we know the Trump stance is he's going to just tariff basically everything.
Right.
And then Joe Biden has implemented some tariffs in solidarity with some other countries, specifically targeted towards China on electric vehicles, various steel and aluminum commodities. So it's certainly a tool in the toolbox of our government officials. And it just kind of, it depends. So basically, though, the consumer is the one that pays for it at the end of the day through higher prices.
And James, does OEC? I mean, who tracks that? How is that actually implemented and ultimately paid?
No, that's actually a very, very good question. And I would say that the logistics industry has been pretty slow to the uptake with getting sort of digitization, more technology in there. Over the past few years, I think that you've seen a lot more of those data points being administered. The thing is you really, until it takes usually probably about 4 to 5 months from when the tariff is implemented to start to gather that type of data. So it's just, we have to kind of wait and see how it's going to go. But we know that if it's a 10%, it's going to result in higher prices across the board.
Thank you, James Vanderloo, head at OEC Group in Milwaukee, a leading facilitator of importing and exporting goods. I certainly appreciate you coming around and hanging out with us, James.
Appreciate it, Dom. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you. You too, folks. This is the Dom Salvia Show. Going to come back with some of your calls, 855-752-4842.
Is it for the money? No, it isn't for the fun. It's a plan, a scam, a diagram. It's for the benefit of everyone. You gotta have a little respect.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842. I want to thank our most recent guest, James Vanderloo from the OEC Group, talking a little import-export. Hope you got edified a little bit. Of course, the answer to the question, tariffs. Who pays them? I think James said mostly, unless the owner, the importer, whoever's paying that bill wants to absorb the cost and not pass it along. Typically, that will be paid by the consumer. Let's remember that. It's a tax on the consumer. And if you're the one consuming, that means you. And we're not bringing containers in to not sell stuff to Americans here. So ultimately, you will pay the price. Some reporting on this, found this one at the Hill. Longshoremen strike deadline looms large over economy and election. Tens of thousands of longshoremen in 14 ports along the East Coast and Gulf of Mexico poised to walk off the job Tuesday morning if the union and employers cannot reach a new labor agreement by midnight, threatening to disrupt both the economy and the 2024 election. Negotiations between the International Longshoremen's Association, as James mentioned, that's the ILA, and the U.S. Maritime Alliance, USMX, soured earlier this summer, and the two sides remain far apart on key issues, with the contract set to expire tomorrow. 85,000 longshoremen is represented by the ILA, and the USMX has about 25,000 port workers. This would be the union's first strike at all East Coast and Gulf Coast ports since 1977. A long time. Now, the ports handle a majority of U.S. container volume and a quarter of the annual international trade in the U.S., about $3 trillion. A 1 week strike could cost the economy $3.78 billion and increase the cost of consumer goods, putting pressure on inflation. Now, estimates for the economic impact of the strike vary widely, from the $540 million per day forecast by the Conference Board, estimates to be as high as $5 billion, according to analysts at JP Morgan. Well, that's a big range, man. 500 million to 5 billion. Now, despite the potential economic impact, the White House has said it is not considering invoking the Taft-Hartley Act, a 1947 law that allows the president to request an 80-day court-ordered cooling-off period if a strike would imperil the national health or safety. When President Biden was asked on Sunday whether he would intervene to stop the impending port strike, he said no. When asked why, the president cited collective bargaining. Quote, We support collective bargaining. We believe it's the best way for both American workers and employers to come to a fair agreement, one that benefits the workers in a way that reflects the success of the companies. White House spokesperson Robin Patterson said. Patterson also noted that the weekend senior officials have been in touch with USMX representatives, urging them to come to a fair agreement fairly and quickly, one that reflects the success of the companies. Senior officials have been in touch with the ILA to deliver the same message. Now, the union demanding a ban on the automation of cranes, gates, and container trucks, as well as higher wages. In announcing the statewide preparations for the strike on Monday, New York Governor Kathy Hochul called on both sides to come to an agreement that respects workers and ensures commerce can continue through our nation's busiest ports here in New York. Rep. David Rouser, a Republican from North Carolina who represents Wilmington, one of the sites of the potential port strikes, took aim at the Biden administration in a Monday Morning Post on the social medias. Of course he did. A week-long strike would create a backlog at our ports until November. The Biden-Harris administration has failed to protect our economy and the American consumer. So what about the American workers, sir? What about the folks that are on the docks? You know, the essential folks that were there dealing with the supply crisis during COVID. What about those folks? Are you worried about them too, or just worried that maybe your GI Joe toy from China is going to be delayed a little bit? Some lawmakers have expressed their support for striking workers while calling for an agreement to minimize the economic impact. Rep. Jerry Nadler, he's a Democrat from New York who represents part of Manhattan, said he's proud to stand with the longshoremen as they fight for fair wages, protections, and respect they deserve. They are the backbone of the U.S. economy, keeping our ports and supply chain running smoothly. During the pandemic, the longshoremen stood with us to keep shelves stocked across the nation, Nadler said. It is my hope that both parties quickly come to an agreement to prevent a strike with wide-ranging impacts on the port operators, economy, and longshoremen. And finally, Rep. Troy Carter, a Democrat from Louisiana, represents New Orleans, another potential strike site, said both parties must come together in good faith to find a solution that respects workers' rights while minimizing economic disruption. Every worker deserves fair pay for their labor, period. I fully support the International Longshoremen's Association right to bargain for fair pay, benefits, and working conditions. I also recognize the significant impact a strike of the scale could have on the U.S. economy. Former President George W. Bush was the last president to invoke Taft-Hartley, using it in 2002 to end the lockout of longshore workers represented by the International Longshore and Warehouses Union. But pulling that lever could be a political minefield so close to the election. More to it, folks. But yeah, kind of a big deal. And I certainly support, the workers and the union, the laborers, man, fight for what you can. The profits of the importers, I haven't seen it really reported here, but certainly, given the circumstances and the way we see the market has returning, the Dow has returned. We see the businesses increase. We see our GDP, unemployment low. Presumably, these folks are making lots of money as well. Let's get Tim in from Wales. Tim, I can give you about 60 seconds. What do you got for us?
He should intervene to block the strike. Just like 2 years ago when he helped, 2 years ago, he did the same thing with the railroad and blocked the strike from the U.S. Railroad.
Shouldn't he let it play out a little bit, see how it happens, let them try to get their deal done first, don't you think, Tim?
He stepped in pretty quick with the U.S. Railroad because that would have shut everything down internally, not just for foreign imports.
Right on. Appreciate your opinion. Tim says, do it. Deal. Make it happen. President Joe Biden. I say give him some time. Put some pressure on these companies. Folks, this is the Dom Salvia Show. Coming back, more of your calls. 855-752-4842.
The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.